produced by class war, a newspaper which didn't seem to be saying these things, and was mainly, and I'm sure Ian will confirm this, because he wrote most of it, was mainly talking about violent street demonstrations and putting coppers in hospital. And Unfinished Business, apart from the things I've just read out, did say a lot of those things too. Things which can't be reconciled with the case of the Socialist Party. And I think two differences in particular, stand out from all this between the two organisations. And I think they can be summed up in two words. And the first word is class, and the second word is violence. Class and violence. And I'll just spend a short time explaining what I mean by this, because I think these two elements go right to the heart of things. First of all, class. The view of the Socialist Party is that there are two classes in modern society. One, the working or wage-earning class, and two, the capitalist or owning class. And everyone who depends for their living on a wage or salary is a member of that first class, the working class, the wage-earning class, and everyone who doesn't depend on a wage for their salary because they own or control enough wealth is a member of the second class, the capitalist class or the owning class. On that basis, it goes without saying that the vast majority of us belong to that first class, and a very small minority indeed to the second one. The wealth of that second class, the capitalist class, derives from the work of the first one, whatever that work may be. It follows from this that there's an inevitable conflict of interest between these two classes, in that workers try to get the best price possible, the highest pay they can, when they sell their mental and physical energies, while capitalists seek to maximise their benefits, that is, the profit they make from employing us, or employing workers. And this conflict of interest manifests itself in all sorts of different ways, and can only ultimately be resolved by the majority class understanding their position. Most of them don't, but understanding their position and deciding to take action in order to change things, to take over the running of society and set up a society along the lines I've already talked about. Now, class war shares that last objective, the kind of society I've talked about clearly. If you read their, if you read what they say in their manifesto, but they clearly take a different view of class from the Socialist Party. So while the Socialist Party has what you might call a two-class view, class war has a three-class one. Fundamental to class war's view of the world under capitalism, and including it in the book as well as in the newspaper, is the idea that there are not two but three classes in society. Not just working class and capitalist class, but middle class too. And the middle class consists of people like me, actually, teachers, researchers, doctors, social workers, civil servants, journalists, managers, etc. Those, I suppose, who might be referred to by many people as professionals, and in class war's language, in class war's sort of quite rude language, get referred to in various other ways, such as yuppies, posh bastards, trendy wankers, backstabbing hypocrites, etc. Fair enough. In the words of their statement of position in their newspaper, in this recent issue of their newspaper I've got, according to them, the middle class do the dirty work of controlling and organising or disorganising the working class. And their role, as Ian himself puts it in Bash the Rich, is propping up the system they allegedly despise. So these people are seen in class war's view as facilitators, as aiders and abettors, as collaborators in the capitalist exploitation of workers, as not having revolutionary potential and therefore presumably needing to be defeated along with the capitalist class in order for a transformation of society to be brought about. Now, while the Socialist Party would recognise that for some purposes it might be useful to identify the kind of people mentioned here as middle class. It might be, for example, if you want to sort of look at pay people earning capitalism, that kind of thing. we would reject the idea that they are in a fundamentally different position with regard to ownership of wealth than workers in other kinds of jobs. And I think we'd argue, well, we'd certainly argue that to regard them as different in this way is misleading, and it's a needless complication when it comes to understanding society. And this underlies an important difference between the Socialist Party and class war when it comes to looking at how revolution can be brought about. And this difference will, I hope, become clear when I say a final word now about the second of the two differences I referred to earlier, and that is violence. The first was class, second violence. So difference number two, violence. Socialist Party's position on violence with regard to how socialism can be achieved is that violence is undesirable and probably unnecessary. Our view is that you only achieve socialism, the society of free access and voluntary cooperation, when the majority of people want it. And when they do, and Ian said a little bit about this, somewhat disparagingly I know, but we can talk about this later. When people want it, they won't need violence to get it, since they'll be able to use the machinery that capitalism has already been forced to establish for its own organisation. In particular, but maybe not exclusively, the ballot box. Only then, if at some point a minority is prepared to use violence to try and thwart the majority, would there be any need to use force, or the threat of force, or whatever else, whatever other means might need to be used. Now, we're aware of the objections that some people, including anarchists, and including Ian indeed, may have to this. We've heard them many times, and we think we've answered them many times, but I'll leave that for discussion because I'm sure it will arise. Now, class war's position on violence, and I'll be corrected if I'm wrong here, is that it's misguided to think we can change things by peaceful democratic action, by voting, for example, and that violence is therefore a necessary and inevitable means to achieve the revolutionary objective, since there will automatically be a violent reaction to a growing revolutionary movement as it develops and grows stronger. Early on in Unfinished Business, it stated boldly, revolution means civil war. And in Class War, the statement of position, which is included in, I think, every issue, the manifesto, if you like, says violence is a necessary part of the class war. So the class war view seems to be that a majority will to establish the new society will not be allowed to express itself without coming up against violence engendered by the privileged minority, who will have on their side their accomplices, the middle class, who in this view, it's also in the book here, they say make up around 20% of the population. And here's the connection between that aspect of class wars theory and the need they see for violence. If what they see as the middle class will always side with the capitalist class, then there'll always be significant opposition to social revolution. At least 20%, maybe more than that. Well, as I've said, we disagree with that. There definitely is a class war in capitalist society, but not that kind of class war. We'd also reject, and this sort of touches on something else Ian said a few minutes ago, we'd also reject class war's call to violent action, to fun if you like, as I think Ian sees it, and his book graphically sort of details it, to violent action in the current society, which they see as a necessary expression of day-to-day resistance